Did you know you can support Hugo's Desk in Patreon? Starting as low as $1 per month, your subscription to the channel will give you access to a lot of perks. For example, you can vote in my next video, or help me select the next topics of the channel. You'll have access to our growing Hugo's Desk community with a private Discord channel and a private Facebook group. You can even take part of our monthly Q&As and AMAs. By subscribing to my channel in Patreon, you're not only helping me keeping the channel alive, but you can help make Hugo's Desk better, bigger, and with even more content. And now, on to the video. Thank you so much.
My name is Hugo and welcome to Hugo's Desk. If you haven't seen part 1 of this video regarding the pre-production, please then click on the link on the screen right now. In this section, we'll discuss production. I want to show you how we used motion control to film this project at Stiller Studios in Stockholm, Sweden. Also, I need to show you how we handle a reshoot with a new actor 4 months later.
I want to talk about the importance of director's references with the actors, show you how we did the HDR and what setup we had, including how it's done using PTGui. I want to talk about the importance of photography on set, both for references, but also for behind the scenes. And we will finish off with the conform and editorial, and how we used Nuke Studio to basically conform this entire project from the 6K plates in red into the respective folders for all of my artists to work with. And last but not least, I want to briefly show you the amazing automated Nuke pipeline from Stiller Studios. So let's not waste any more time. This is part 2, production. Then we came to the stage where we had an animatic. Now this animatic is approved from the client, and as you can see, it has all the shots. And here, because we're doing motion control, we already know the lenses, we already know the camera positions. This is all scenes done in Maya that we can then load into the motion control. This is the beautiful thing about having motion control. And that's why when you look at these shots, they look so similar to the final trailer. And then we just use that camera for CG, for rendering, and for compositing, which you will see in detail on part 3 and part 4 of this video. We also had to do an empty version. I'll explain what I mean with an empty version. This means it's an animatic which is with no characters and no props. This is the one we're gonna have in real time at Stiller Studios going on the screens, so that then they can do a live key and we can actually key the actors directly into this backdrop. So that's what we did here. It's what we called an empty animatic. And let me just show you a little short film of how the shoot went. So this is, of course, the entire thing. As you can see here, this is all the shots we made. This is the studio there in Stockholm. And this is me trying to pretend that I know what I'm doing. Me and Will O'Connor were on set directing this. One Brockhouse was there as well. Here's us discussing like directors, you know, with a coffee mug on their hands and pointing at the screen and looking really, really serious at the screen. It's always what directors do, isn't it? Then, of course, I had a help from some of my students on set from Campus I-12. They were there as extras. Here you see the projection system on the floor, where it really helps you to position everyone and even see the geometry. And then you can lower the lights and actually position the lights exactly where the geometry was. So this was, of course, very handy. So we had a great time at Stiller creating this. And of course, it goes without saying that this is almost like, you know, a playground, because for a CG artist like me or a 3D artist like me, a 2D artist like me, this is literally almost like having a real size Maya scene for you to play around with. So definitely check that out. For the camera that we used on this project, we used the Red Digital Cinema Epic, and in this case we used the Red Dragon. Back then in 2015, this was the best high-resolution camera that you can really get, since we were going to shoot the full 6K. Reason why we were doing the 6K is because I was trying to get the Cinerama look. I was really interested on the sensor size. As you can see, it has effective pixels of 6,000 by 3,000 roughly, and the sensor, as you can see, it's 30 millimeters, 30.7 by 15.8. and it has 16.5 f-stop. So this was a great camera back then for us to do the widest, range we could get. Of course, these days, if we were doing this project again, I would, of course, used an Alexa 65 since it has a much bigger sensor size. Now, regarding the motion control, this is the main setup at Stiller Studios. As you can see, the brain of the camera is attached to this huge arm, and it's all automated, of course. Keep in mind that the camera is all calibrated to this studio. That means that they are only using red lenses. Back then, they were using red lenses, and the whole studio was calibrated. What I mean calibrated is that when you have motion control, for you to have more accuracy on the pixels and also on the distortion, you have to keep in mind the lens distortion. And so Stiller Studios already, before even the shoots, they were already pre-calibrated all the lens distortions so that when they did the Maya scenes and they did the Nuke scenes, they could already apply lens distortion accordingly. I know these days they still use red lenses, but they also are now using ADI lenses as well. Now, it's all controlled upstairs on the second floor by Thomas, and Thomas is controlling basically the entire system through, he has Maya open, he even has like a red button in case of an emergency, which is very important because this is a beast, this is a really dangerous mechanical arm. So in here, of course, he has Maya, he has access to Nuke, he has access to After Effects, and you can see the live fee. As you can see here, we have a real-time fee, and then we have a live fee in green screen, and then that's how it operates. We load the scene into Maya, and then Maya basically fully calibrated runs through their plugin, and then in their plugin it actually plays back in real time. Here another image of, and that's why we've actually had some geometry of placements of people inside the Maya scene. Now for playback, it's just like any DIT station on set. They have a common playback system where you can basically do pre-comping, you can do some keying, you can do some simple stuff like dissolving, you can cut the shots, put in the animatics, and really replay any take. Here's me and Juan Brockhaus. Juan Brockhaus was our CG lead, and here are we. You can see the magnitude of the stage. It's really funny because there's no motion, because it's motion controller, you can repeat the scenes time and time again. No need for tracking markers. So for me as a VFX supervisor, it was weird to be on a place where I don't have to put tracking markers. And here's a little side view of the beast. This thing is huge. It's several tons. I can't remember anymore, but I believe it's 3 or 4 tons. And that's why you can move the camera. It's actually called a Cyclops. It's from Mark Roberts Motion Control. You should really check out the work that they've been doing. They do a lot of motion control rigs, but the Cyclops is really the biggest one, and several tons, and it's all cemented in the floor of the studio. And the reason they've done this is because then it's fully calibrated, and also it's actually completely perfect to the ground. This means that you can run, even speeds of 200 frames per second, or even run speeds of 300 frames per second without vibration. Now, for those of you that don't know motion control, here's an example of what it can be done. So this is another shot from this project. This is the keynote shot. As you can see, we do not have hundreds of people on set. And so in here on this crowd, we had to replicate the crowd. And so that's what motion control is good at. Because you can replicate the same camera movement several times, that means you can do a clean plate for keying. But also, even better than that, you can actually shoot several plates. So in here you can see we have a plate of the main actor with his shadow. We have the plate of the sides, and all these people are always the same. We've just basically swapped around the jackets, and we swapped around the styles of, I'm just going to do that again, sorry. We swapped basically the jackets around. We changed the styles of the hairs, and also like we moved around the cameras. We moved around the phones. We made them jump in different ways, and so that's why it looks like it's hundreds of people, but it's really not. It's in here, as you can see on another shot of the same trailer. You can see here how the motion control helped us, because then we could shoot some of the actors together, and then of course we could have foreground people, because this camera move was really long, so we had to merge the two camera moves. So we ran out of space on the motion control, and then we had to continue the move to have the foreground people, which are going to show up here. As you can see, these people here, we basically move the set to the front and then continue the move. This is the cool thing with motion control. You can make calculations to continue long camera moves, and because you're using the same lens and you basically calculate that in Maya, you can do these kind of complex shots. And of course, last but not least, for the atomic bomb shot, here's all the plates that we've shot in green screen. So we had multiple takes with the motion control because, like I said, we had limited amount of soldiers. We also had limited amount of suits and weapons. So we really had to shoot several takes using motion control. Another advantage of this setup at Stilo Studios is that you can project the Maya scene into the floor. This allows you to mark people. So we use gaffer tape to mark the main actors. And so even before the main actors come in, we can mark them up. And this, of course, is very accurate because if you're using, as long as you use the correct dimensions inside of Maya or inside any other 3D application that you're using, then you'll be fine. Then that means that you get a one-to-one representation. This is also cool for other shots, like on, for example, on the shot of the key of the garage with the table, we could actually position props exactly like we fought on the animatic. That meant we could position the computers, the TVs, the tables exactly like they should. We could even go as far as actually positioning carpets and locations so that we have the limits of the stage. So as you can see, this is the limit of the garage scene inside the studio. Of course, then the cool thing as well, of course, about motion control is because the camera is always the same move, you can do rehearsal without the actors. So this was the day before. This is what we call the pre-light. The pre-light is the day before where you test things. So we're testing lenses and setups, and you can see here the real-time monitor here running the actual render that we've made. And then we can start positioning people where they should be. So we mark the people with gaffer tape on the floor, and then we can actually place them. And here's a very silly first version of what we were making. And the beautiful thing of real-time rendering, we can actually see it all. Now, back then, this was 2015, it was very limited. We only had the Maya scene here to do real-time keying. These days, I know Stilo Studios is much more advanced. They have actually Unreal running in real time. So you can have very complex CG running on that screen. You can actually have real lighting and everything because you can run Unreal, so you can actually position the lights in the correct place. Now you might be wondering, why do I have like basically a bunch of pages with me? Well, this is what we usually call the director's treatment. You know, very commonly directors are on set with a bunch of references. These references are stills from, you know, images that we talked about on the pre-production on part 1 of this video. You know, I'm talking about like images like these ones, which were big references for the project. You know, images like these from Kanye West. This was part of the pitch of the project, of course, but it also comes down to giving the set, you know, and everyone involved a sense of where you're going. You know, you kind of want to bring all these images. I usually print them out. I take them on set, and then I can share all of this with my DOP, and I can share this with everyone on the crew. I can show it to my first AD so that they can feel what kind of project we're making. It's all about the feeling, you know. If you want to talk about Cinerama, you can't just say the word Cinerama. You have to kind of like show them some stills of Cineramas like these ones. It's so much easier, not only for the first ADs and DOPs, but also to talk with the actors. I think even for me, from a personal note, for the actors is even more crucial because they really need direction. They need to know what we're making. And especially on a green screen stage, the more images you bring with you, the better. The more they understand what you're trying to achieve. One example, of course, this is not for the shot that we're deconstructing today, but this is all part of the treatment that you usually bring with you. So you see, this is the animatic, and then you also bring some mood images with you to tell them, okay, this is kind of the mood that we're going to have. This is actually a still from a 70s garage from a film about Steve Jobs. And, you bring some mood images for the lighting, especially to talk with the DOP, like these ones, you can talk about like window lighting and color palette. You bring them some interesting frames of films that you like, especially if you want to talk about the kind of like windows and lights that you want to come in, especially on the first shot inside the garage. We debated a lot about that with the DOP. Bring some images of what kind of atmosphere, bring some film noir references, and last but not least, this is a wonderful website that I love. I go here all the time to see some references. It's a website called Movies in Color. It's actually just moviesincolor.com, and it's a wonderful website. I use this all the time for all my treatments as a director. In here you have basically some of the best frames from cinema, and they break it down to the color palettes of light, medium, dark, and general spectrum. And this is fantastic, because not only you can give this to your colorist if you want to achieve a certain tonality on a film, but you can also show it to your DOP, and you can kind of understand the kind of tones that we're going for from the light, medium, and dark range. Of course, on this first page, you have a lot of Ghibli films, but as you can see, it has, it's hundreds and hundreds of stills that you have here. Going from films, from TV shows like here, like from The Walking Dead, to The True Detective, to Lost, and it's just a wonderful website. So you guys should definitely check out moviesincolor.com. So regarding the shot that we're actually deconstructing, I'm really sorry that I'm all over the place and I'm showing you shots that we're not gonna do on this video. I promise that I'll do them on the other videos, but today is about the nuclear explosion shot. These are the animatics and the boards for it as well. I showed you some of this stuff from pre-production, but in for me, pre-production and production is very tied together. So that's why this is all kind of like mixing now. In pre-production, I showed you some of the Jarhead references, but these are some of the references that we brought on set printed, so that we can talk about the lighting, especially how we would achieve the type of lighting and how we would achieve the type, like of indirect lighting and light sources as fires, those kind of things. So we can discuss this with the DOP with Marcus, when we were on set. And they were great, man. They stayed there for several hours. They were very patient with us, so that was cool. So we ended up shooting. Now, the cool thing with Stiller Studios, as you can see here, is that because it's motion control, you don't have to have any tracking markers on the wall. So you basically get really a perfect green screen, and you can even have a clean plate as well, because, of course, you have motion control. Here's Thomas. Thomas Wall is explaining how he should actually turn and put the guns. Thomas was a huge asset for this project. And Juan Brockhaus here is explaining as well the object. I always try to bring everyone on set. It's always good to have people that are going to work on the project in the set as well. It really helps the development of the project. And then it was really as simple as just making multiple takes. We struggled a little bit because of the slow motion. It's always hard for you to pretend that you're in slow motion. Although we were shooting in slow motion, we couldn't really get slow enough for the movement we had to do. But that was really it. Like, we did, I think, 7 or 8 takes. The cool thing about this is that whenever you do a good take, whenever me and Will O'Connor were on set and thought, okay, this is going to be a really cool take, then Thomas could make a note of the take, and then what would happen is that that note would actually show up in the Nuke script. So in the Nuke script, you would have all the scenes, in that we shot, and you would have a highlight of the best scene. And then at the end, we ended up doing multiple takes of just the camera, static camera, with the actors doing multiple poses. This was just to fill up the audience, basically to have a bunch of people surrounding the scene. So we had actors looking at the bomb, we had actors running from the bomb, we had actors, falling to the floor, we had actors running from one side to the other side, actors walking up to the bomb to look at it. We did multiple takes. We had people sitting in the floor, almost like people that have given up. We had, of course, people screaming. We did a lot of multiple takes. Just the whole point of this was to have as much flexibility as possible so we can fill up the scene. And I think at the end we had like 10 people on the shot. We had some problems with running, of course, because we didn't have a lot of space in the studio for people to run. It was great. Here's Marcus. Marcus is our DOP. Now it's actually our award-winning DOP because we recently won 3 awards. We already won 10 awards with this project, but we recently won 3 awards at the Telly Awards. We won Best Director for myself and Will O'Connor. We also won Best Visual Effects, which is for myself and Juan Brockhaus and my team, of course. And also we won for DOP for cinematography for Marcus at Stiller Studios. So this was a really great achievement for us at Fire.Smoke. We were really, really happy to have such a talented team on this project. So this is the first comp that was done. As you can see, it doesn't really work out very well. Of course, we had the running guy on the side here. He looked a very, very weird running. We also had a lot of overacting on the main actor in the middle. This guy also was falling down, which he was falling down too fast. These guys were okay, but as you can see, it didn't really work out exactly like we wanted and like we planned. We did some iterations and we moved people around and we basically had other people on different situations, different places, you know, just basically between me, Will O'Connor, and the client, we were just trying to debate what would be the best suited thing. We ended up starting to have more people on the background here, as you can see. We have some people running, getting up. We have some people actually falling down and trying to escape. We have some people there. So we started filling this up to as much people as we could. And that was it. Like, we did multiple versions of this. These are all the versions, you know. Whenever you do a project like this, you always have a lot of versions. You bounce a lot of things with the client. And this is usually, for me, the natural process of things. You tend to want to experiment. Now, at some point, both the client and me and Will O'Connor weren't completely happy with the acting we had. So we ended up reshooting about 6 months later. But we weren't there. That's the cool thing with Stiller. Stiller has the ability for you to have a live stream. As you can see, this has changed now. It's a bit more modern. But back then, you could have all these cameras. You have surveillance cameras. You can view from different angles. You have comped cameras. You have real-time cameras. We have the live camera feed, and it gives you all the information. So this was amazing because that meant that we were all on Skype. As you can see, this is the old take we had from the actor that we weren't very happy with the acting performance. Then we replaced it with Thomas Wall. So Thomas Wall made a much more convincing acting of him just turning around and looking at the bomb with the gun and then starting to flake, really, starting to run. As you can see here, this is the final comp. We have a lot of particles flying through the air as well, a lot of people running towards us. As you can see here, some behind the scenes. Thomas is talking to me on Skype. We're basically going through the scene. We have it in real time, and we're all talking on. We have Juan Brockhaus in Germany, the CG lead. We have Will O'Connor in London. I was in my house, on my office at Hugo's desk, and it was wonderful. This is how we did it. Now, of course, we also took multiple HDRs. We didn't took an HDR of the actual shot of the bomb, of course, because that's just a green screen. There's no point of us making an HDR for that. We took some pictures of the set and we knew exactly how it was. So the HDRs are done as I usually do them with the 5D. At the time, it was a 5D Mark II. This was 2015. I now these days have a 5D Mac. I have a 5D SR because it has a lot more resolution. So it makes much sharper HDRs. Now, we did HDRs for the garage, the keynote, the 8 shot, and the Philadelphia shot. And basically, after shooting them, you get something like this. So this is, for example, an HDR. This is done out of 28 photos. These 28 photos basically are the different brackets of exposure that we used on the camera. You should definitely check out this video that is on the screen right now. This is a video where I show my pipeline of how to use this. I tend to use a 5D. And then I use a 360 rig on my tripod to do something like this. So this was, of course, for the first shot, which I've deconstruct before. So you guys can check that out as well on the video that is on the screen right now. So I've done a deconstruction of that shot already, at least on the comp side of things, on the compositing. Not a full deconstruction like I'm doing now, but I use an application called PTGui. You should definitely check it out. It's a really good application. Here's the application, PTGui Pro. Very good software for stitching photos, and of course to do bracket HDRs. Of course, the bomb shot didn't have an HDR, like I said, but let's just use the first shot. It's going to be really quick. I mean, when you shoot it correctly, and if you follow the video that I've done about shooting in HDR, and if you have a proper equipment, you can pretty much do an HDR in PTGui almost automatically. So it's going to be as simple as me, hitting the load button. I'm going to go into my garage scene. I have my bracket photos here, so of course I've already done it, so I'm not going to do it again. I'm going to just select all of my different 7 brackets for each angle for the 4 sides. I'm going to select them all. As you can see here, we have all the source images. They're basically the 4 angles from the 360 on 7 different brackets, so that we have as much range as possible. Then from here, I'm just going to not really going to touch any of this because I don't need to add any more images. It's basically an 8mm lens fisheye. It actually detected what lens it was. I'm using the Canon AF815 f4 fisheye lens. So we're going to use that one. I'm going to then press align and I'm going to say through HDR. And I'm going to say enable HDR mode with link the bracket. So it actually detects the project appears to have 4 sets of 7 brackets. So would you like to continue? Yes, I would. It's going to start aligning it automatically. It should open up the panoramic editor. Just give it a second. Now, in the panoramic editor, of course, you can still adjust things if you would like. I mean, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. It kind of looks like, oh, it's all correct to me. But, of course, if you really had some stitching problems, you could have fixed them here by selecting individual photos of the actual brackets. So it will allow you to actually choose sections and then move the photos around if you needed to. I'm going to close this and I'm going to now create the panorama. And now the panorama is done. I'm just going to open up. And as you can see, this is my panoramic HDR, which this first one is really a JPEG, and it's really helpful for you to see where lights are and if you want to set up your 3D scene, or even inside of Nuke if you want to set up some extra light. Now here I am in Nuke. This is of course an HDR image. It's 8K, so it's really big. It's going to take a bit of time to load up. This is the photo as it looks, and as you can see, we have every single piece of dynamic range on it. And we can actually, if I zoom in here really close to a light, you can kind of see that it has all those 7 brackets. It has every single range. So this is, of course, would be the image that we would use on the CG rendering to actually light. We don't usually use the HDR only. We tend to use the HDR as a base for the lighting on 3D. And then after we use it as a base, then from there, we would put individual lights. It's always good for you to actually put real lights in, and just like they do on set as well. In terms of texturing in photos, of course, goes without saying, whenever I do a project, especially like a project like this, I always take hundreds of photos, not only me, but also the people that are with me on set. And the reason we take a lot of photos, and the reason why I would always tell you to, whenever you're on set, take hundreds of photos. First of all, it's a great way, for example, when you look at these photos of these shelves. This is a great way, which, by the way, we had a little nice book of Shake 3 on the shelf there, which you don't see on the film, but it's a nice touch. Imagine if you had to shoot this shot again. Imagine that you had to return to it. Then, of course, you would know where objects were. So it's a great way of having references. Not only having references, but also this gives you lighting reference. It gives you size reference, scale reference, all sorts of references. You're not going to naturally use the shots, but for example, these shots here with the sandbags just gives you texture reference, for example. So if you want to check something that you're trying to do in 3D, then maybe this is a good way to do it. The same goes for photos of the soldiers, great references as well. I think one last thing that is also very useful with these kind of photos is for documentation. You know that later on, not only you're using this, to see what kind of boxes you had, what kind of things that you have to track, but also if you want to document with a making of, if you want to document later on for posterity, if you want to do behind the scenes. Because whenever, for example, you send a film to a festival, they always ask you for making off and behind the scene photos. So then you have a bunch of them. They also have a really nice workshop. The workshop is where they build all the little gadgets that they do for the cameras, and all sorts of gadgets can be used for actually to use for the filming, especially now these days since they have mocap suits as well on set. I'm going to skip most of these photos since these photos relate to another shots that we're not talking on this deconstruct. We are talking specifically of the nuclear explosion shot, which is these photos here. So we only had 4 military suits. Here's us taking a selfie of all the soldiers next to me. Me with a ridiculous hat as well. So there's not much out of photos, of course, because it's just a green screen stage. And they were just running, and basically they were just doing the shots. I'm a big fan of them behind the scenes because I'm a fan of sharing information, as you guys probably noticed with the fact that I have a YouTube channel where I share everything. I believe that sharing is the most responsible thing that a senior artist should do. Basically because I'm a senior now, but of course I was a junior once, and I had to learn somehow the trade of the business, and I had to learn visual effects somewhere. Now, if I had a lot of people sharing back then, it would have been a lot easier for me. So I find it myself as a responsible artist that I need to share my information as well, so that new artists become better and they move forward in the industry. Don't forget that any artist that is starting now will potentially be an artist that would work with you. So I don't only have a vested interest not only at sharing information and making people better, but also, of course, I have a shared interest in having good artists working with me. Okay, so let's go through some of the files that we had for the conform of this project. So these were all the files and folders that I got from Stellar Studios. So Stellar Studios has a very advanced pipeline, which you will, and they have a very automated pipeline. And basically, you basically get, you get some offline clips, which are literally the backgrounds that we used for the real-time previewing inside Stellar. These are just basically just the camera moves in very low resolution quick times, just so that we could have something to key on top. Then you get, your offlines, you get your source, which is all of your red footage. As you can see here, we have all the dates that we filmed. We had 4 specific dates of filming, including, of course, testing and pre-lighting as well. So we had a lot of pre-lighting, and it's all red epic 6K footage. And then we have, of course, the project files. Stellar Studios also produces automated project files, and I'm going to show you a bit later, but these project files look a bit like this. These are automated project files made by their system, and we're going to go through them here so I can kind of show you what they are in a minute. Then you have some data files as well. So the data files are something actually quite cool because you basically get these PDFs. So this is a full PDF report, and it's also fully automated by their system. And on this PDF, you get basically all the shots. You get the bloop light. It's very important for you to know what the bloop light is, because the bloop light is this little flashlight that opens up in the beginning of the shot so that you can sync the plates, because this is motion control, of course. You get also information like lenses, you get information of f-stops, frame per second, and as you can see here, there's also a rating system. So, for example, this plate is 4 of rating, this plate is a 5. This is because when me and Will O'Connor, when we were directing this on set, we would see a plate and then we would say, oh yeah, we really like this shot. So then Thomas Wall, our VFX supervisor and VFX director, you would put in the rating for that shot. And so that's what we had here. So this is, of course, the full spreadsheet of everything that we shot, every single shot, even the lens grids after. And of course, when we did the reshoot for the main character, also we had another PDF, So if we go to Nuke Studio here, so I did all the conforming in Nuke Studio as I usually do. This is something that I picked up when I was still at the mill as the head of Nuke. Basically, when I was the head of Nuke, we used to use a lot of Flame to conform projects. But as soon as the Foundry created something called Hero, we started using it as a beta testers at the mill. Both me at the mill and also Russell Duxton on Framestore as well. So we both used Hero a lot back then. Back then it was still called Breakaway, which was the name code of it. But just a little history for you guys there. But these are all the plates we have. We have all the first shot. We have all the atomic bomb. We have all the hobos. We even have the lens grids. We have we even have here Thomas holding up the collar charts as well. I'm just going to show you here because it's a funny shot. So we have Thomas here holding the collar charts. We have, of course, exposure. We have all sorts of plates. We have B plate rolls. We have like all sorts of things here, and they were mostly shot at 60 frames per second because we were all going with this kind of slow motion effect. I'm going to focus on shot 20 today. So shot 20 is the bomb shots. I'm going to just focus on that one. Basically, this is the actual timeline of that shot, and the way that this works is that we had a beep light, and I'm gonna show you, and this is how you sync this. So if I go back into the main shot here, for example, if I select this and I just put this up here and I play that back, you see that there's like this stick just on top. I'm just going to actually open up the frame here a bit more so you guys can see what I mean. So this is an automated stick done by Thomas at Stella Studios, and basically what it does this. It gives you a beep light, and these beep lights, these flashes that go in front of the lens, they're basically your synchronization lights for you to sync all the plates, because this is motion control, so you have to sync all of them. And as you can see here, I named them all. You know, I have Thomas Clean, I have Thomas Run, I have Thomas Run 2, Thomas Run 3, I have ungraded Thomas, I have right side dude. So if I show you what this all is, I'm just gonna like basically disable them all and kind of show you. So you see, we kind of started with having, you know, some troops in the back. So you see, this is the original actor of the troops. You see the original plate of the actors. This is what we call the ungraded troops V1. I'll explain in a minute why I wrote all these things here. Then we have, of course, a clean plate for that. Then we have more people running. Then we have more troops on the back there. Then we have the radio dude here. So as you can see, all these plates kind of merge together, and the backlight is always the same because this is motion control. This is the beauty of motion control, because you can kind of like sync everything up. Just Thomas, this is the second time we shot. And then of course we have more plates of Thomas running on the background. You see this is Thomas running in slow motion, again with motion control. We have even more Thomas running again, trying to escape the explosion, which is a bit silly. And then we have even more of that here as well, as you can see here. And then of course we have the full clean plate. Whenever I have motion control, I try to have a clean plate because of course that will help you a lot on the keying. Now that this is all kind of settled, you can kind of see that as you can see here on the names, Nuke Studio has this functionality where you actually rename the shots, and as you can see, they all called shot 20. There's a reason for that, of course, and they all have the names of the plates still originally, so that you can actually track them down into the red footage. And as you can see, they all here. So the way that this works is that I'm only exporting really the middle, because of course the reason I have this section here is because this is all the plates before the bleep. So I can sync all the plates together, because if I go between all the plates, they will all sync with that bleep. And my take, as you can see here from the offline, it all kind of starts on the middle here. And then the end, of course, I don't need it because we're not using it because that's the next shot. So this is actually the length of my shot. And so what I did here is, it would be that I would select, for me to conform this and give it to my artist, I would basically select all the plates that we would want to export. In this case, we would export, so it would be all these plates that we would export. And so then I would right click and then I would go to export. And now I have a template already made for Homefront. Now, the way that this is going to be done, I'm going to go into the Finder to show you what I mean. So Homefront's pipeline is a typical pipeline that I've been using for a few years. for doing game cinematics. If you go into sequences, I have the name of my edit, then I have all my shots. The shot that we're talking about today is this one, which is the bomb shot. And as you can see inside of it, we have a 3D folder which has all the Houdini files, Maya scenes, and XSI scenes. We have also caching. We have the comp folder, matte painting folder, plates folder, and pre-comp. Now in comp, of course, we have the published Nuke scripts, and we have, of course, all the versions of the Nuke scripts. But inside plates, as you can see here, we have a published folder, and inside that published folder, you have all these plates. These are all the plates we've made inside of Nuke Studio. So this is where the names come from. As you can see here, it says HF, which is Homefront, and it has shot 20, then it says ungraded. Now, you don't want to export all of these things individually one by one. So this is, as you can see here, that's why we have all these names. Now, if I go back to Nuke Studio, you see that you can never forget that on the left side, these are the templates that are available on this computer. Now, on the right side here, this is a template that I created specifically for this project. And so that's the cool thing, because if you save it on the right side, it becomes part of the project, so you can share it and it becomes there. Now, in here, we can see that we pointed up to the folder. Now I have, of course, it creates all these folders. Of course, these folders exist already, but you can see here the procedural method of it. Like, I have inside sequences, because I have inside sequences, I have edit 120. Now imagine if I had a cut down, I had a 60s cut down, or I had a 45-minute cut down. I could have called it different sequences. So that's why I have, and the brackets here is called bracket sequence bracket. That's because it picks up all these sequences I have on these folders. You see, this in a way is a sequence here. The bomb middle troop, the troops plates, the shot 20, that's a sequence. So it will pick up the name of that sequence. Also, it will pick up the name of the shot. Now, the name of the shot will always be the name that you can see on the timeline here. So if you see here shot 20, that will be that folder. Then, of course, it makes also a track folder. So that's why you see all these, if you go here to plates, you see on published, you see all these tracks. These are picking up the names automatically from all my different tracks. And then, of course, the file itself, which is basically Homefront, and then shot, which is, of course, picking up the name from shot 20. So if I had shot 20, 30, and 40 on this timeline, it would make different names there. The track, of course, which is these names that show up here on the track, and then the version, which picks up the version from the version token here, so I can put whatever version I want. In this side, I'm basically doing RGB only. I'm making linear, EXR, 60-bit ALF, and zip1 zipline. And now, in this side here, you can also use cut length. I tend to do some handles. So I usually, for these kind of projects, I do 10-frame handles. I also start them on 1001. So that means that this clip will start on 1001. And this is really good, because if you change, if someone changes the edit, you can go backwards. So that means you can go to 900, or you can go to 800, or you can go to 700. So that's why I always recommend starting on 1001. So this is pretty much it, how we conformed. So this entire structure then, of course, eventually created all these EXRs that you see here. One thing I do as well is that I tend to keep this button ticked, keep Nuke script. The reason I do that is because then it will export a specific single script, Nuke script, into each of these folders. So if Nuke Studio crashes, or if you have an issue, or if you need to find out what the problem is, then you can at least open a Nuke script for each individual exporting. And that's pretty much it, really. Like, once we had that done, we had all the plates exported. Of course, one thing you cannot forget, which I did forget, sometimes you do forget, is don't forget to put the hash here. So do not forget to put the hash, otherwise if you don't put a hash, then it won't export. So this is how we actually export. So I'm just going to close this down, and I'm going to actually just, and this of course was done for every shot. So if I, for example, go here to shot 5, you'll see that exactly the same thing happened. If I go to shot 50, for example, you'll see the same exact thing. All the plates are exported the same way. So I'm just going to kill Nuke Studio here for a moment and show you something else as well. So this is what I'm going to show you now is actually the Nuke script that comes from Stella Studios. So this is actually really cool. This is an automated system. So you see, you basically get the camera. Of course, this is an exported camera from the rig of the motion control. You also have, of course, all the plates that was shot. And the cool thing about this is that it actually has the ratings and comments. So this is like the Nuke script that outputs automatically. Of course, it would have been nice if it would have been done directly in Nuke Studio, because then it would have been a lot easier.
Please don't forget to leave a comment. I would love to know what you think about these videos, and of course, let us know how you did your shots. Our community thrives by sharing knowledge, so we're all so eager to know how you achieve your complicated visual effects shot. Hope you've enjoyed these videos. Thank you so much, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.